We're constantly measuring behavior, from the speed we drive to the number of laps we run, yet we're almost entirely oblivious to this fundamental human activity. It's the silent force improving our daily interactions, and critically, it forms the bedrock of applied behavior analysis.
That's exactly right. In applied behavior analysis, measurement isn't just common, it's the foundation for all scientific discoveries and for the successful application of any technology derived from those discoveries. Without precise measurement, we can't truly understand if an intervention is working or why it's working.
So, it's not just about tracking progress then. It seems deeper than that. What role does it play in the broader scientific context of behavior analysis?
It absolutely is deeper. Measurement allows behavior analysts to operationalize empiricism. It moves us beyond guesswork. As Sherlock Holmes famously said, quote, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data," end quote. Without objective measurement, our understanding of behavior would be subject to individual prejudices and opinions. It lets us describe phenomena precisely, consistently, and in ways that can be publicly verified.
That makes sense for researchers seeking scientific understanding. But what about practitioners on the ground working with clients?
For practitioners, measurement is equally vital. It helps determine a target behavior's current level and whether intervention is even needed. Then, during the intervention, it tells us if our efforts are successful, if and when behavior has changed, the extent and duration of those changes, its stability, and if changes have generalized to other settings or behaviors. Frequent measurement, what we call formative assessment, allows for dynamic, data-based decisions about continuing, modifying, or ending treatment.
So, without this constant feedback, practitioners risk continuing ineffective treatments or, conversely, stopping effective ones prematurely because they misinterpret the impact. It's a matter of accountability too, I imagine.
Precisely. It optimizes effectiveness by allowing practitioners to make real-time adjustments. It also helps verify the legitimacy of treatments touted as evidence-based, and crucially, helps identify and terminate treatments based on pseudoscience. As the text states, measurement is the practitioner's best ally in the quest to find and verify effective treatments, and to root out those whose strongest support consists of testimonials and slick internet ads.
When we talk about measuring behavior, what exactly are we measuring? Like, if a friend asked you to measure a coffee table, you'd ask if they wanted its height, width, or weight. What are the dimensions of behavior?
It's a great analogy. Behavior, like that coffee table, has measurable dimensions. Johnston and Pennypacker described 3 fundamental dimensional quantities. First, there's repeatability, also called countability, meaning behavior instances can occur repeatedly through time and thus be counted. Second, temporal extent. Every behavior occurs for some amount of time, so its duration can be measured. Third, temporal locus. Every instance of behavior happens at a certain point in time relative to other events, so when it occurs can be measured.
Let's break those down. Repeatability seems straightforward, like just counting how many times something happens.
It starts with count, a simple tally, but count alone can be misleading. For example, if a student wrote 15 correct math problems, that sounds good. But if it took them 60 minutes versus another student who wrote 10 correct in 5 minutes, the context changes everything. That's where rate comes in. Rate combines count with observation time. Skinner considered rate of response the basic measurement for behavioral research, defining it as the number of responses per unit of time. It makes measurement much more meaningful. We also look at celeration, which measures how rates of response change over time, showing acceleration or deceleration.
So, rate gives us speed. What about temporal extent, the duration?
Duration is the amount of time from the onset to the end point of a response. It's crucial when a person engages in a behavior for too long or too short a time, like a child having tantrums for over an hour or a student staying on task for only 30 seconds. We can measure total duration per session or duration per occurrence, which gives us the length of each individual instance.
And temporal locus, when behavior occurs.
That primarily involves latency and inter-response time, or IRT. Latency is the elapsed time between a stimulus onset and the initiation of a response. For example, in a study, rats searching for trapped people under rubble had their latency measured from release to finding a target. IRT, on the other hand, is the time between two consecutive instances of the same behavior. Shorter IRTs mean higher response rates, and vice versa. It's key for interventions that aim to reduce or increase response rates.
Beyond these fundamental dimensions, the text also mentions topography and magnitude. How do those fit in?
Topography is the physical form or shape of a behavior. Think about the way someone writes a letter M. Its form can vary, but it still functions as an M. Measuring topography helps us determine if a response meets specific criteria, like in a handwriting analysis. Magnitude refers to the force or intensity of a response. This is important when the desired outcome depends on a certain force, like turning a screwdriver with enough force, or speaking loudly enough to be heard, as in the example of Karen, a 6th grade girl whose voice loudness was measured because she spoke too softly in class.
So these are specific characteristics we might need to define for a target behavior. Once these dimensions are identified, how do applied behavior analysts actually collect the data?
There are 3 main categories of methods: event recording, timing, and time sampling. Event recording is a simple tally of occurrences. It's easy, but only for behaviors with clear start and end points and not too high a rate. For example, counting how many times a student answers a question.
What about timing?
Timing uses stopwatches or other devices to measure duration, latency, and IRT. It's crucial for behaviors that occur for extended periods, or when the speed of response or the interval between responses is critical. The procedure involves activating a timer when the behavior starts and stopping it when it ends, then accumulating these times.
And time sampling? That sounds like taking snapshots of behavior.
That's a good way to put it. Time sampling involves dividing an observation period into intervals and recording behavior during or at the end of those intervals. There are 3 types: whole interval recording, where the behavior must occur throughout the entire interval; partial interval recording, where it just needs to occur at any point during the interval; and momentary time sampling, where it's recorded only if it's happening at the exact moment the interval ends. A variation, plot check, is used for group behavior, literally counting heads engaged in an activity.
It seems like each of these time sampling methods would give you a different picture of the same behavior. The text even mentions artifacts. How does that happen?
You're right, they can produce different results. An artifact is a phenomenon that appears to exist because of how it's measured. For example, whole interval recording tends to underestimate the actual occurrence of behavior, because if it stops even for a second, it's not counted. Partial interval recording tends to overestimate it, because even a brief instance counts the whole interval. Momentary time sampling can be more accurate, but can still miss a lot of behavior, especially if it's brief. The data from these methods, while collected accurately according to their rules, can be misleading about the actual duration or frequency of a behavior, making them artifacts of the measurement system.
That's a critical nuance. So if real-time observation isn't always feasible or perfectly accurate, can behavior be measured after it's occurred?
Absolutely, through measurement by permanent product. This involves observing the effects a behavior produced on the environment after the fact. The effects must last long enough for measurement. For instance, counting completed math worksheets or collecting baseballs hit into a specific area are natural permanent products. If a behavior doesn't leave natural products, we might create contrived ones like video recordings of posture or audio recordings of speech.
What are the big advantages of using permanent products?
There are several. It frees the practitioner for other tasks, allows measurement of behaviors occurring at inconvenient or inaccessible times and places, and can be more accurate and complete because you can review the recording multiple times. It also facilitates data collection for inter-observer agreement and treatment integrity, and makes measuring complex behaviors or multiple response classes easier. For example, video recording allowed researchers to measure a student's posture, voice volume, and face touching simultaneously from the same footage.
But it can't be used for everything, can it? What questions should practitioners ask to know if it's appropriate?
Correct. They should ask 4 questions. First, is real-time measurement needed? If moment-to-moment decisions are required, a permanent product might introduce too much delay. Second, can the behavior actually be measured by permanent product? The product must be consistently produced by every instance of the target behavior and only by the target behavior, not other behaviors or other people. Third, will obtaining a contrived permanent product unduly affect the behavior? The presence of recording equipment might create reactivity. Finally, how much will it cost in terms of money, time, and effort?
So we've covered what to measure and how to measure it. What tools do practitioners actually use for this?
There's a wide range from low-tech to high-tech. Low-tech tools include pencil and paper data sheets, wrist and hand tally counters, abacus counters, masking tape, and even moving pennies from one pocket to another. They're functional, easy, and inexpensive. On the high-tech side, we've moved from Skinner's cumulative recorder to sophisticated computer-assisted measurement using laptops, mobile devices, and wearables. These can automatically record multiple dimensions of behavior, analyze complex data sets, and even generate graphs instantly. However, we must be cautious. Machines can break, and programmers can make mistakes, so the tools should always align with the data collection goals.
With all these options and considerations, selecting the right measurement method must be a challenge. What's the guiding principle there?
The key is balancing the resources required to observe and measure with the planned uses of the data. You have to consider the target behavior, the goals, how easy it is to detect the behavior, the environment, and the skills of the observers. The adage, just because you can, doesn't mean you should, applies well here. We only need to collect the type and number of measures necessary to make timely, data-based decisions. Over-measurement can be superfluous.
This conversation has underscored that measurement in applied behavior analysis is far more intricate and foundational than simply counting things.
It truly is. It's about systematically understanding and improving socially significant behavior, ensuring our interventions are effective and ethical.
If you found this discussion insightful, share this episode with someone else who would appreciate learning about the intricacies of measuring behavior.